What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Spiritual Gangsters podcast. It's me, your Teresa, your host as usual, and we're back with a live today. I haven't done a live in forever, it feels. So yay, anyone who's watching, thanks for tuning in. And yeah, I am obviously here with my co-host and great friend, the NY Patriot. Want to say what's up?
What up? What up? What's going on?
Not much. How are you?
Very good, very good. And
That's
I do,
exciting.
I do just want to remind people too. We are streaming out to Rumble as well on your platform.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, we
Thanks.
started doing that too.
You're the tech wizard, so thanks for
I figured you
sharing.
might as well. I mean, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. And I'm really excited for today's show. It's a little bit different, I guess, because we have a guest, but we also are focusing on a specific topic. So I'm really happy to have on Mario of Symbolic Studies. Welcome to the show.
Hey there. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you today?
Oh, I'm solid. I'm excited to
So-
get into this.
Yeah.
It's an interesting subject, so thanks for prompting it.
Of course, yeah, and I'm having Mario on obviously because he's awesome. Number one, and two, because I love your breakdowns of symbolism on your account, Symbolic Studies on Instagram, and I'm sure you're in a bunch of other places. If you want to tell people a little bit where they can find you and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you mentioned, my project is called Symbolic Studies. I would say symbolicstudies.com is probably the easiest thing for people to do if they want to find all my links and if they're interested in tarot readings or anything like that. I am a tarot reader and I've been a graphic designer for 20 years. That kind of led me into symbolism. So I've been studying, icons and sigils and stuff for a really long time. So it was kind of a natural fit for me, actually, to really get into this sort of subject matter. When I started learning the tarot, it really blew my mind, of just like what these sort of elements and symbols and iconography, like what it actually meant. So it was definitely love at first sight. If people are interested in astrology, they might like my channel, my account, especially on Instagram, I would say symbolic.studies, because I tend to follow each sign and put out content related to the sign that we're in. So, like right now, I'm prepping for a presentation later this week about the lion. And it's going to be called The Lion and the Virgin. And there's actually a lot of very interesting symbolism, kind of somewhat related to what we're going to be talking about today. I probably won't get into it that much. But the lion has always had this reverence or this endearment for the Virgin. And so I'm going to unpack that for Leo season on Friday. But yeah, check out my YouTube channel too, Symbolic Studies.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoy your breakdowns. For me, like coming from a Christian background, like the tarot is very much like shrouded in mystery and intrigue. And it's like, ooh, should I not want to learn about this? Right. So what's your take on that? Like if someone was to go to you like, oh, tarot is like evil, or like what's your interpretation on that?
Yeah, sure. It's a good question.
A lot of
To
people
me,
be
you know,
wondering.
if there's anything evil, I would say it's ignorance of self, right? And so I would say it's like not doing your personal work. It's like not addressing your own shadows. It's like that's when real evil actually comes about. And that's when things really can kind of run amok, if you will. And so to me, I look at the cards and when I see the devil card, that's an aspect of self. So I don't believe in an external devil. It was either Chris Campbell or Jung or something like that, but it's like all of the gods and demons are within us. So to me, the tarot system is basically a representation or an expression of that. And I would also say that all divination systems are basically like that as well. And so I'm just interested in divination systems in general, I would say. So I've studied the I Ching. I have a fondness for the runes as well, and I've used the runes and have read a bit about them just over the years. And so I just am kind of a person where I'm just interested in all of these systems. I would refer to myself symbolically as like a syncretist. And so I want to know what's out there and I want to kind of compare the systems. I want to see, how people saw things differently. And I enjoy and it kind of appreciate the different cultures and how they see things. And divination in general, I mean, you can use anything and people have used so many different things, entrails, or birds flying over you. You can create divination systems out of everything. Tea leaves, right? That's another popular example. And so cards and dice and things like that. To me, there's all of these different systems out there, and I just find it very curious to see what they associate with what kind of energetic quality. So when I see these systems, they're just basically trying to map out, I would say, the various sort of like archetypes that exist just in nature in general.
Yeah.
Right. And so and we have all of that within us. So I personally don't think there's anything evil going on there. However, there are people who have created, as an example, tarot decks for very malefic purposes, right? So one of the earliest tarot decks, it's an Italian deck. It's called the Solabusca. It is one of my favorite decks, but no doubt it was used for black magical purposes, right? So whoever commissioned it, and what they were actually doing with it, I'm not sure if anybody actually knows, but when you look at the artwork and kind of like tarot historians and stuff, when they've decoded what's going on in the deck, it makes a lot of sense that, you know, whoever created it or whoever was using it, definitely they were participating in, you know, the black arts, if you will. So you can use it just like a tool. You can use a knife for the most righteous of reasons, or, you know, you can commit a crime. So I kind of look at these systems kind of in that way too.
Yeah, I understand that, and that's in my research for the topic today. So we're relating. You didn't even say what it is. We're relating tarot with Italian playing cards. So if people have never heard of that, it's just literally like a playing card deck, like you would have, you know, playing whatever Crazy Eights, but Italian version. So we're talking about those because one day I was looking at the cards that I have in my house. I've played with these since I was a kid. Like common games would be like Briscola, Scopa, whatever. And I'm looking at it and I was like, these are like the major like suits of the tarot. Like there's the coins, denari, there's bats or bastoni, there's swords, spade, and what's the last one? Cups, coppe. So those all correspond with like major things in tarot. And I was like, that's really interesting. So sorry, my kids are just playing up a storm in the background. But anyways, that's what kind of sparked the idea for the show, because I personally don't know a lot about tarot. So in researching for the show, I came across some history of it, and I was like, actually, it seems that the beginnings of it was not occultly related, really, for tarot cards.
Oh.
It seems that that came about like much, much later.
Right.
From
You
what I
know, one
learned.
of the things I'll say is that there's different schools of thought with everything, with the history here. And so, and I'm open to kind of all of it, to be honest. And so that's kind of my syncretist sort of nature of just like, hey, well, what are people saying out there? And, you know, some stuff will be relevant to me. Some stuff I kind of put on the shelf or whatever. But yeah, I understand that a lot of people, they do think that that's the case. My personal opinion, I was talking about this before we started, is that I think a lot of gaming systems, especially gambling systems, actually started off as divination magical systems. So the history of the dice, as an example, goes way, way back, and it's related to this magical system, divination system called geomancy. And so people used to use dice to create these
bones, actually.
Yeah,
right? Tossing
exactly.
bones.
100%.
Dice.
Yep. I think it was knuckle bones, if I'm not mistaken.
What?
Yeah. And so you actually were creating your geomantic figures by throwing bones or by throwing dice. And you can use anything. You can use pebbles, you can use stones. Same thing with the I Ching. You can use really, really simple things to create and build your hexagram or trigram. And so I think a lot of games actually started off in a magical sort of way. And so when I see like how people gamble today, you know, blackjack and like things like that, I'm like, I think that there's probably the case to be made that they actually started off as divination systems and then they got translated over into games. And one of the things this kind of parallels, in my opinion, is what I've heard before. This is just another one of these things where people have put this out there. What's actually true and accurate, I'm not really sure. But people have put forward that they started off as a divination system and that some of these systems were actually banned by the church or banned by, you know, whoever was at the top of the hierarchy in their town or village or region or whatever. And so they translated some of these divination systems into a game so that if they were ever caught with these materials, that they could actually just say that we're just playing a game. We're not doing divination, spiritual sort of stuff.
That makes
And so it's
sense.
almost like a way to kind of like be cryptic with it, is to kind of disguise it as a game.
That
So
makes
that's just
sense. Yeah.
one opinion, you know.
That's interesting. Yeah. I find too, like, just the idea of divination in general, it's kind of like a thing we naturally do. Like, I can even recall as a kid, being like, if I'm meant to do this, God, like, let this happen now. And you kind
Yeah.
of like looking like always for signs or whatever. I used to do that
Well, I
constantly,
even
like
think
growing
flipping
up.
a coin, in a sense, to heads or
Totally.
tails. I mean, that's kind
Yeah.
of.
Or even when you are engaging in like gameplay, like card play or like a board game, video game, something like that. Sometimes, at least the way I play, I very much am like directing my energy like towards my end goal. Like, okay, I'm gonna roll like a 6 or whatever. And then it happens because you're really like, well, sometimes it doesn't happen. But when you're really like focused on the outcome, it's almost like you're trying to pull some energy to help you out. You know what I mean? So it's like a natural kind of thing that we do, to be honest. I don't know.
I think so.
I think so too. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's why people have done it from all over the world, and that's why there's endless ways to do it, I think.
Yeah, and then I will just say like a little note, for some of my audience, it's a wide variety of people that listen to the show, but some people who are Christian, if you're kind of like hesitant about this or whatever to entertain the idea of tarot, even in like the apocryphal works, there was even like how Joseph met Mary in other books, like extra books of the Bible, not included in the Bible that we generally use. But there was a whole like things that they used to do, like reading with like pendulums or like little signs and wonders, like Joseph's staff had flowers on it. That's how she knew that she should marry him. Like all these things that we've lost like over time, and they don't focus on these sort of like more aspects like divination or signs and wonders, this kind of thing. So it's interesting. I just think it's all cool to learn about. So yeah.
Same. Yeah, exactly. I'm
All
right there with you.
right. Yeah, so we can get into a little bit of what I came across in terms of the history of the Italian cards, and it sort of like goes hand in hand with the history of tarot as well, I think. So, feel free to interject, guys, and interrupt me or whatever.
Sure.
Okay, so the first thing that I found was for Sicilian playing cards specifically. So when you look at Italian playing cards, there's ones from all different regions. So Sicily is one.
There's like families that have their own decks.
Totally. Yeah. And that's what we found like in our research, right? Like a lot of the decks started because a certain family would like commission the deck or like for that region, like the symbols became popular because they, tailored it to that specific region. So, anyways,
They're
the
like the ballers
Sicilian.
of the area, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, common decks you might see are, I have some right here, like Sicilian ones or Napolitane deck. This is probably the most popular. Like when you see these cards, that's what you'll think of when you think like Italian cards or whatever. They have these on t-shirts. I used to make my own t-shirts with designs from
Oh,
that
cool.
deck. Yeah. Other decks are the Trevignane deck, Piacentine, stuff like that. So there's all different regions that have their own like little spin on generally the same cards. So anywho's, the Sicilian playing cards, I learned, originated in China and were adopted in Egypt in the 14th century, which is interesting. However, another source claims that there was a battle in 751 AD, the Battle of Talis, and Islamic forces captured two Chinese paper makers who then taught them how to make paper. And then that's how like you could print cards. It's because without paper, you can't have cards, right? Interesting. But prior to that in China, it was a tile system. So kind of like we guess think of like, what's that game?
Is it Mahjong?
Mahjong, yeah, kind of
Yeah.
like that. So they say that that's how even prior to cards, it was on like hard surfaces like tiles or stone or whatever. So apparently in this battle with Islamic forces, they stole the Chinese paper makers. They spilled the secrets on how to make the paper. And then from there, the knowledge traveled to the Iberian Peninsula of Spain, which is interesting, I thought. And from Spain, of course, with trade routes and whatnot, it spread to Sicily and southern Italy. There's a heavy Spanish influence in Sicily, southern Italy, Malta, like all that Mediterranean region. And then they would adapt the decks for their culture. But generally, the four suits have remained the same. So the swords, the cups, the coins, and the clubs. And like you touched on, Mario, cards were prohibited a lot of the time because it caused way too much ruckus associated with gambling, heavy drinking, a lot of violence. So the church like outlawed it, except during Christmas, which I found like so odd. I'm like, it's not supposed to be like the holiest time of the year, but
Right.
they just let them go drunk crazy, like, right? Oh yeah. Do you want to bring up? Should I bring up the pictures of what the cards actually look like? I guess, right? Do you have any
Yeah,
that
I
you
do.
want?
I have some old ones. Yeah, I was actually just bringing up the site I think
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you.
just to show. I just thought it was interesting how it does show the Italian ones here, and like you were saying, then on the bottom it does actually show like the Spanish one.
Yeah. Interesting, right? Um, Actually, if you don't mind,
And then I can pull up. I have some Visconti pics.
you know what? I'm just gonna bring up the regular ones first, so people just
Sure.
get a sense of like what they just look like in general.
One thing I do want to add, I know we're not getting into that, but
Mhm.
those older decks,
Yes.
you're talking about people in paper.
Yeah.
Prior to that, technically, I mean, in a sense, you were getting your own personal version because like they were painting them themselves or drawing them. Like, these were done by hand
Yes.
and then sold or given or whatever. So like
Yeah. At first, the decks had to be painted by hand because we did not have a printing press yet. So that's really interesting, I thought. Like how much time and effort is going
I
into
know.
like each deck of cards. Like that's intense.
then I was
And
also
expensive.
I also did think in if you're making those decks and like obviously like maybe the people buying them from you really don't know much about this stuff. Technically, you could kind of give whoever you want whatever you want. Like, it doesn't necessarily mean just because I painted this deck and gave it to this person who might live, on over here
Hmm.
somewhere else, that came to just get it from me, whatever, however it happened. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, you could actually give people false stuff because you're just like, oh, when I just make this, guys, I'm going to leave this little secret out or something.
Yeah, you
Like, you
totally
could
could.
actually really dictate who's actually getting more of an authentic thing than not.
Hmm.
I mean, that's just me. Like, maybe I'm just a piece of crap.
You could, yeah. I would imagine if you were probably like some elite family, you might commission your own, like with more detail or more accurate,
Yeah,
whatever,
I'm
renderings.
always like thinking about the Ninth Gate, how like you needed all three of those books to get all of it
Ah,
because there was, you know,
yeah.
purposely implanted shit in there so you didn't know everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how do you know if somebody has to personally make every tarot deck? They would never do that.
Well, and that's another interpretation of the history of it is because some sources say, like playing cards in general and the tarot might have originated from the burning of the Library of Alexandria, that all this like ancient occulted knowledge was ruined. So then sages and wise people got together and made this system of representing the knowledge in these metaphorical images, and that was a way to preserve the knowledge post destruction of the library.
Mm. Yeah. That's interesting. I have something that I want to share in a book after we check out these images about
Sure.
one of the potential links with the tarot too in ancient Egypt, and a lot of these engravings that you see. Apparently, there's an engraving. It's called the Bembein Tablet of Isis, and you have all of these small little scenes next to each other. And people have said that that's actually it was a tarot deck essentially, that they're showing you
Oh.
literally, the cards kind of in a way, but just these different scenes, and that they were later adapted to the cards. I think it's very interesting that you say the whole history of it too by going to Egypt in the 1400s or 14th century,
Yeah.
because then in the 15th century, that's when you see the most popular like original tarot decks. That's when we see them crop up, and as I mentioned earlier, they're all Italian. And so that's very, very interesting. The
Show me.
Visconti, yeah, the
Yes.
Visconti, the Solabusca, and the Marseille.
Okay.
Right. My understanding is that those three decks, it's really hard to determine which one came first, but what we do know is that they were all Italian. So Very,
Those
very interesting.
Italians, they know what's up. No kidding. Okay, so just to give people an idea of what these cards look like, if you've never seen them. So this is the suit of swords, spade. So on the left is the ace, which looks very serpentine to me. The three, and that is called the cavallo, so the horse guy, or the jack, I guess would be like the equivalent. In the Italian deck of cards, there's 40 cards, so 10 each suit. So there's a number like ace all the way to 7, and then 8, 9, 10 are face cards. So the cavallo is like a 9.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
Just real quick, want to mention the fact that the swords and then the platform that the man is on, it's blue. And I just did a stream maybe a month or two ago about the Spanish tarot tradition. And it's interesting that you say that there was that influence, which makes a ton of sense.
Yep.
But they actually associate swords. Normally, in today's world, most people, myself included, I would say the sword is symbolic of air, which is the mind, right? Here, by painting it blue and by having that blue platform, I think of water. And under the Spanish tradition, they actually associate sword symbolism with a lot of water symbolism. So I'm kind of seeing that overlap because they would make their swords blue, and then there's like oceanic stuff going on with some of the sword cards. So I'm wondering if they're kind of making that elemental correspondence, if it's a little different than what I'm typically used to. Is it more so associated with air here, or is it more so associated with water? I can kind of see the case for both, maybe.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I could see in an alchemical sense how air and water could be very easily linked as well.
100%.
I mean,
Exactly.
just the way how we get rain and cloud. I mean, that's water just changing itself, evaporating into air and then condensing and falling back down. So, I mean, you see that constantly being done on not on its own, whatever program.
It's natural. It's a natural process.
Whatever natural program that's running the matrix.
The programmer wills it so it happens. All right, cool. Okay, this is cups, copa. So we have the ace on the left again, the 3, and the cavallo. I included the cavallo for them because it's the most interesting looking. Like the king is just standing there, and then there's the other character of the face cards is called the donna, or the woman, but it doesn't look like a woman. It's like a tranny. Like I swear to God, it's like could be either gender. So it's also sometimes called the knave. So it's almost like what's that word that knights had? Like their helper.
Jester?
No. Not apprentice.
Oh, those dudes in Monty Python that were banging.
Yeah, they like help the knight. That's how I think of like the donna is like the helper.
I know what you're talking about.
The knight, who's the cavallo, and then they assist the king. That's how I think of the deck. Anyways, so in this one, the cavallo standing on red. I don't know if that means anything to you, Mario, but
yeah, well, it's just interesting. Most people today would associate the cup. Obviously, it holds water. It's related to the heart, and so arguably, red makes sense because of the heart-blood connection. But I think most people today would probably associate it with blue because of the water liquid sort of emotional thing. When I think of the emotions, I've said this many times before, but you have the word emotion, you remove the E, you have motion, you remove the M, and phonetically you actually have ocean. So ocean, motion, emotion, all of these concepts are completely related to each other. So the fact that they're relating it to red, obviously it implies warmth. So I just think it's kind of a curious thing that they decided to kind of go this way, given the fact that they also did a similar sort of, not a switcheroo necessarily, but they associated the color of the sword with blue and water. All of the colors and the elemental correspondence of the actual like symbol that it is connected to, they're all kind of like shifted just a little bit. So it actually gets my mind going and thinking, like, I'm wondering the people who made this system, what they would say about it. Why red?
Yeah, unless maybe for wine, drinking wine.
Oh, there you go too. That's perfect. Yeah, nice. I like that.
And to be associated maybe with blood, like you were saying with the heart.
I like what you said about the relationship between those two, Mario, because even what you just said right now isn't anything I've even thought about, and it's a perfect example how you said like the heart and the blood are connected. Even in the Kabbalah, Venus or Netzach would be green, and that would be the seventh sphere. And then across from it, on the other side, would be Gabora, and that is red. They do share a relationship because when you make talismans for these things, if you're making a Netzach one, a green one, your flesh and color will be red because it has a relationship with Gabora. And vice versa, if you're making a Gabora talisman, you'll use red and the flesh and color will be green. There's a connection. And I think that right there, what you just said is like a totally other way I've never thought of. And I do think maybe, again, like that could be shown here.
That's cool.
Yeah. Nice.
All right, so moving on to Denari, or as I grew up knowing it as the suns, because in the Napolitane deck, the coins have suns in the circles. So I used to just call it the suns, but it's actually called Denari. So like coins, like money. Sorry, my kids. Anyways, and to me, this was always the most intriguing suit growing up because look at that ace. Like, come on. It's got the double-headed eagle or phoenix. It's so like Roman looking. And then you got the 3 and the cavallo again. This time he's standing on gold or yellow. Now that I know more about symbols, of course, the double-headed eagle to me is like so interesting. But yeah, I don't know what you guys see when you see those.
No, this is another interesting example. When I was checking out the cards that you had sent over, I'm like, oh, that's kind of a curious switch. And I love this stuff. I live for this kind of stuff, of just like, what was the rhyme and reason behind this? Because as an example, today, you're going to see most coins or pentacles or discs with a 5-pointed star on it. Definitely emblematic of Venus. Venus in the night sky over the course of 8 years from the perspective of Earth creates a 5-pointed star. It's known as the Venus rose or the Venus pentagram. So Venus rules two different signs. It rules Libra, which is an air sign, but it also rules Taurus, which is an earth sign. And when you're talking about the pentacles, you're talking about physicality. You're talking about material resources. You're talking about literally the terrain underneath your feet, but you're also talking about the terrain that is your body, right? There's a relationship with your body and the earth. And so when I think of pentacles, I generally think of earth symbolism, which is interesting here that they show the sun, because in my opinion, basically, we live in a solar tradition in today's modern world, whereas a lot of people back in the day, they believed in a more earth-centric, geocentric kind of tradition. And so in a way, the earth and the sun, I'm not saying that they're completely at odds with each other, but it's almost like two different traditions, an earth-centric tradition, which I refer to as the polar tradition, and then also the solar tradition. So even polar and solar, noticing how close those words are to each other. But on the other hand, it makes perfect sense that there would be suns on here too, because it implies gold, right? And so it's just like, if you wanted, of any coin out there, would you rather have a copper coin, a silver coin, or a gold coin? Yeah. Obviously, gold is king. And so as in terms of monetary value and, things like that, I think the sun makes a lot of sense. And then also just given the yellow of the base and everything else, I can't not think of like wheat, a golden field of wheat, right? Yeah. And this harvest sort of idea and the value of that and everything else. So very, very interesting. I like this sort of thing that they're kind of playing with here with all of this stuff.
And Venus is associated with number 7, right?
No? I could see the case for that.
It can be. I'm just curious because in one of the common Italian card games, Briscola, or Brisk, as some people might know it, this card, the 7 of Suns, so it's just like got 7, so well, 7 of Suns, 7 of coins or whatever. It's worth a lot of points on its own, and that's like the only numerical card that's worth points.
Really?
Yeah. Otherwise, it's aces, 3s, and then the face cards, and then just this one particular one. So it's like, why the 7 of Suns? It's called the Sette Bello, the beautiful 7.
That's fucking cool. That's very, very interesting.
Right?
Yeah. So I mean, when you're talking about suns, you're talking about stars, and so you could easily just say the 7 stars. And so the Pleiades, the 7 sisters, that's that's an asterism within Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. And a lot of the symbolism with the Pleiades, it overlaps so nicely with the symbolism that I like to talk about quite a bit with Ursa Major, the 7 stars of Ursa Major, which is in the northern sky. And then also, you can't not bring up the fact that we have 7 wandering stars, which are the planets as well.
That's right.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So it's
Harry,
very, very curious.
Have you ever heard of the Voynich manuscript?
I have, yeah.
Have you ever taken a look at it?
I have, yeah. I haven't like spent too much time with it, but I mean, it's a fascinating creation.
Yeah, the Seven
Yes.
Sisters. You see that quite often, I think. Yeah. You see a lot.
Oh, really?
A lot of the females, it's in sevens. Yeah.
Mhm.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's something I would write actually a future project that I would like to cover one day. So.
Yeah,
Very
that's
cool.
been on the list for like a year now.
Yeah, and I really do think it'd actually be a really interesting one because I do think some of the stuff in there, like when they talk about like, oh, these might be plants, but like they do kind of like look right. It's
Mhm.
because I do actually think it's like inside of us. I don't think it's plants. Again, going back to the eyes and the brain.
Interesting.
Interesting.
And nerve.
Also, a random note for people: that little stamp on the ace, that thing there. Apparently, that started with playing cards in general to show that you paid tax on the deck.
Oh, what?
And that's why, like, so when you paid your duty, you got a stamp, and then you're good to go. Because it's like gambling, right? Like the government wanted to like make money on this stuff. It was so popular. So now they just keep the stamp as a style, like to stylize the deck. That's usually on one of the aces. Yeah.
I mean, the fact that it's on the ace of coins or pentacles or whatever, that is like the most perfect card you can do.
It makes it seem like it's the most important one in the deck to me. Like, right?
Yeah.
No. Anyways, I thought it was pretty cool.
I like that detail.
Yeah. And then this is the bastoni or the bats. So to me, growing up, they always look like paisleys. Like that's what I always thought of it. So we've got, of course, the ace, the 3 with the weird face in the middle, and the cavallo standing on green this time.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Mhm.
Can you go back when you guys are done? Can you just go back one?
Yeah. You want to go back to the suns?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, of
I just wanted to
course.
show you something quick.
Go ahead.
And like you should probably even remember this from doing the eye series with us. Even looking at that thing that's on the bottom, inside that bottom circle on that ace card, there's 3 different twists to your pupil in size changes. And I have often said that going by your eye screwing closed is very much like a shutter or even just a pulley that's constantly spinning. And it's just interesting to me how there's like 3 in the middle, then there's 3 actually making that triangle.
Yeah, look at that.
So and even thinking about like how some like zodiac signs or even, you take that and then you take the infinity sign or the 8, however you want to look at it, that is actually doing like, now changing it from yoked to unyoked and stuff like that. But I do think that might actually be involved in these symbols.
That's interesting.
Especially with you get that one middle, that's the black one. It's your pupil.
Yeah, I was gonna comment on that. That was almost like the pupil, right?
Yeah.
Oh, good.
I think it's interesting since we're here again. It's like, why would the disc or the coin in the ace not be shown as well, right?
Yeah, why is it empty?
Why is it empty?
Yo, I never thought of that before. That's weird.
Yeah, kind of strange.
Very strange. Yes.
But there must be a really good rhyme and reason behind all this stuff, I would say.
Yeah.
They ran out of ink.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe they thought it'd be too expensive to fill that whole space. Like, we'll just leave it and we'll put the stamp there. Perfect.
They're gonna have purple in there. That's too expensive.
Yeah. No, we can't have purple. All right. So yeah, back to the bastoni. I did not look up what the face means, but it reminds me a little bit of the Sicilian symbol, the trinacria, I think it's called, where it's like the Medusa face and then there's like the 3 legs.
Oh yeah.
Around her head. Kind of reminded me of that a little bit. I don't know.
Oh, that's interesting you say that. There is a leg correspondence, I would say, with the wand, pretty much.
Okay.
And so for a few different reasons. But I think that it's, once again, kind of curious that they decided to associate the baton or wand with green. Generally, I would say, most people associate it with fire. And so, the red would be appropriate, the yellow would be appropriate, but this green business, it feels more, I guess, kind of mercurial in a way, and Mercury always holds kind of like Caduceus. He's associated with the phallus as well. He's associated with the pole and a bunch of stuff like that. So whenever I see green, I tend to think of that. And then because of that too, this figure in the middle, and because of the leaves, right, that are kind of above his head, definitely just reminds me of like kind of like he's not himself green, but of like the Green Man, or like this nature man, or this nature spirit sort of thing. Like that is kind of what comes to mind for
Yeah.
me a little bit.
I get that totally. That's what I
Yeah.
thought too. It reminded me of that type of idea, that the Green Man.
Yeah,
Yeah, almost like
definitely.
a pan type of figure, kind of. Maybe.
I would say, yeah, Pan totally related. Yeah,
Yeah.
for a few
Interesting.
reasons, for
In
sure.
some other decks, I noticed the bats or sticks. It looks almost like a fascist bundle. More
Oh yeah.
so, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and not so much like these kind of like rounded ones. Some of them are more like literally stick like a bundled stick. So I thought that was interesting, especially
Yeah,
given
totally.
the double-headed eagle symbolism and whatnot, and we're dealing with Italy, of course. So I thought
Oh yeah,
that
good
was
call.
interesting.
That's actually a good pickup.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, that's all I had for the suits. Yeah, that's the
Oh, you
thing.
know what?
Then
Even if you go. I'm so sorry. I
no,
just
it's
saw it
fine.
now before that middle. This might be a little bit of a stretch, but that middle card again with that guy, that even almost reminds me a little bit of I think it's in an Elvis Levi book where there's like some guy who's got his arms like kind of like that, and then the reflection is underneath
Oh.
him. Yeah, it's
Oh yeah, it's like mirrored, right?
yeah. It almost
Yeah,
kind of does remind me of that, because I guess the overall shape with another face in the middle. That's kind of basically two triangles in a face.
I can see that.
Yeah.
It's cool. I'm just trying to go through my other pictures. Oh, we could get to that in a second. What was I gonna say? Oh, just a couple other like little tidbits of info I found on Italian playing cards. Um, so orphanages, when people would sometimes bring a baby to abandon it to an orphanage, they would take a playing card and rip it in half and leave half of the card like with the baby when they leave it, so that if they ever were able to like care for their baby in the future, they would bring their half of the card to match it, so they would know like this is my child and I'm their parent,
Oh wow.
and like match the exact rip.
Wow,
Isn't that
that's really
crazy?
interesting. Yeah,
I
yeah.
know. It was like kind of sad. I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people, and then like the people at the orphanage would know to like file the card away and keep it with like that
Wow.
specific child. Yeah. Very interesting. And yeah, I touched on the tax thing, the duty stamp. Also, fun fact, the company Nintendo, we all know and love Nintendo, yes. So they started as a card supplier company to the Yakuza crime family in Japan.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
What? I was like, holy shit. So they do like these really ornate, like again, hand painted, super artistic cards just for the Yakuzas, and that was it. And again,
Right.
to like keep stuff like underground, like gambling, like a secret, like all this stuff. Yeah, very interesting.
Wow.
Totally. That's a
I
good one.
don't know.
That's
Yeah.
really
Where do we want to go next? Oh, maybe we'll talk about the Milan thing. What should we do that? And why?
sure.
This one. Okay, so like Mary, you were saying some of the like super important or significant decks seem to be Italian.
Oh yeah.
Right. Right. So one that I came across was the Visconti Sforza deck. So that was, I believe, from the 1440s. And the Visconti's family is from Milan, super prominent, very wealthy, influential family. I was like, are they black nobility? I cannot confirm or deny that for sure, but maybe. Regardless, they were very influential. So they commissioned this deck that was hand painted and customized for them. So then I just was like, oh, who's the Visconti family? Like, that's interesting. So then I found this is their coat of arms. So it excuse me, it's a snake or beast eating a child. That's their coat of arms emblem.
Yep.
Yep, and their sorry, their family motto is "I will not violate the customs of the serpent."
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
And I was
interesting.
like, "Yo, what? You guys got some covenant or what?" Like, what?
You know what's weird? This really matches what Branch was talking about last night. This little thing that we're looking at, this coat of arms.
What did he
Remember,
say?
he was talking about how in the stars, how he was describing how Jupiter was birthed out of that female, and there was a dragon chasing it,
Oh yeah.
and Jupiter was supposed to be like the born child, and there's this dragon chasing it in the sky. I
Yeah.
mean, it's kind of almost I mean, it's just now got half of it in its mouth.
Yeah. I mean,
But I mean,
when
it's very
I
much like what he was talking about with the stars.
yeah, it could totally go with that. It made me think when I first saw it, I just was thinking of child sacrifice and like Canaanites and tribe of Dan. Like that's where my mind like went like right away. I was like, because I've seen this symbol before, not knowing where it came from. So on if you guys know the car company Alfa Romeo,
Yeah.
it's their logo. It's the emblem for the city of Milan, I believe, because the Visconti family was so prominent for so long. It was like a dynasty that the city just adopted it as their emblem from there on out, even after their power kind of dwindled. And then the Sforzas came into power next.
Right, right. And
Yeah.
you do see this emblem. I think it's very curious. You see this emblem in a classic tarot deck, and I believe it's another Italian deck. It's called the Tarot Neoclassico,
Okay.
and you see it on a crest on the tower card on the actual tower itself, on the blasted
Ooh.
tower that's kind of coming down. It's
Wow.
really small, but if you look for it, you can see it. And so there might be a tradition here, I guess, relating this emblem or this family to the tower, which is really interesting because the tower symbolism to me, it's really all about connecting the above and the below, just like the Tower of Babel, right? So you're like building a tower to the heavens, and so you're trying to get closer to God, or you're trying to get closer to heaven, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I just think of all of the different. Yeah, it very much looks exactly like that, except on the tower itself.
Yeah.
So of all the cards that it could be associated with, I don't know. I think that's kind of an interesting one.
Right? Very odd, I thought. The symbol itself, it's called the biscione. So that just means big grass serpent.
Mm.
And I was like, oh, well, that makes sense. I just found it really odd. I'm like, why that family? And why is that their motto and their coat of arms? Like, oh my God. Yeah.
Right, right.
Super odd. What else can we say about that deck? Oh, so the deck was made by an artist named Bonifacio Bembo, who was a fresco artist. So they hired him to do the artwork. The deck had 11 trump cards, 6 court cards, and 3 virtue cards, which were faith, hope, and charity. Another common game that people would play with tarot cards back then was Triumphi. So with trump cards, which I found odd, relating to Donald Trump. I don't know if people remember. Sorry, I didn't get a picture of it, but there was that Time magazine cover with Trump and trump cards, or tarot cards, sorry, in 2017.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yes, you can just Google it real quick if you want. So yeah, this particular deck, the Visconti deck, had gilded decorations, allegorical paintings such as Death, the Hanged Man, the Tower. The game apparently, so this is how, like, I guess tarot morphed in Italy. The game became known as tarot in southern France first, and then morphed into the word tarot. And then the source that I was looking at, this one particular source, says there was no occult meaning till much later in 1773, when a Protestant priest, actually, Antoine Court du Gébelin, he insisted that the cards came from Thoth himself, and that the Egyptian root word was Ra and Ta, which means like wisdom and road. So,
Interesting. Well,
yeah.
I mean, even Crowley's tarot deck, it's called the Book of Thoth. So, and it's a hermetic system, makes a ton of sense.
Right.
The other thing I was going to say regarding the Visconti deck, right, with this family here, the original deck, I believe there was only 2 cards missing. And so all of the reprints are from the original deck, but they had to replace 2 cards. One of them was actually the Devil card. So the original Devil card has never, ever, ever been seen. But different companies over the years have created their own version of what they imagined the Devil to actually look like. And so people have speculated or wondered, why is that card of all the cards missing? And so the idea potentially is that either somebody was using it for ritualistic purposes. Maybe it stayed on their altar. Maybe they burned it. So either they had a reverence for the devil and they were working with it, or they actually perhaps were afraid of it or something along those lines and got rid of it. But
Right.
it's a mysterious sort of thing. What happened to that original devil card?
Interesting. What was the other one that was missing? Do you know?
I think it's like something like the 3 of coins or something like that, or 8 of coins or something.
Gotta
I
be
can't remember.
a coin card, of course. Those
Yeah.
suns and denaries. Yeah, that's interesting. And then I think another tidbit about tarot history. Some sources were saying that the cards sort of traveled from Egypt to Europe through gypsies, and that the word gypsy actually comes from the word Egypt.
Ah, nice.
I did not know that before. I was like, that's news to me. So, yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I knew that either.
no.
But since you just brought it up, do you mind if I show you guys the
Totally.
tablet of Isis real quick?
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, let me take this.
Absolutely.
Unless we could talk about this since it's on the screen.
Yeah, no, I just was going to show there's 3 other crests before we even get to the cards.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'll just show these real quick.
Yeah,
These
go
are
for it.
ones that I found just for like the family crest as well. Just different versions.
Mm.
I don't know what makes them change, like why there's different versions. But
So I think this one, I don't know if you were going to say this, and why, sorry, is the Sforza crest. Because I believe the Sforza family has Germanic heritage, and that's why they added the eagle, the imperial eagle, and then made it like one.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. There we go.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. So this is Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings right here.
Ooh.
Classic book. Lots of interesting information. And I was just very, very pleased to see his example here of what he says the original tarot is, or one of, perhaps, right? I'm sure they got it somewhere else. But he includes a fold out. And this is known as the Bembine tablet or table of Isis right here. And maybe I can get a little closer for you guys.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's.
And so in the caption down below, he basically says that all of these little scenes essentially equate to one tarot card. And so you can see all of the energetic sort of expressions of the tarot in that table. So he says that this is one of the earliest tarot systems, I guess.
Very interesting.
So for what that's worth.
Phew. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Right.
Amazing.
And then also, just because we've talked about the suits as well quite a bit, just wanted to show people that this is kind of like the traditional sort of correspondence here. Let's see. Okay, there you go. So English, French, Italian, Spanish, and then Swiss, German, and then German. So you can see that the hearts line up with the cups, line up with the roses, the diamonds line up with the coins, the bells down below, the clubs line up with obviously the clubs, but then down below the acorns, and then the spades line up with the swords, and down below the shield, and then also the leaves. So different ways of explaining the 4 main elements, right? Air, water, fire, earth. And then the 5th element would be spirit. And what I would say regarding spirit is that in most tarot decks, the major arcana is the most potent expression of spirit in the whole entire deck. And so that's the path of the Fool. So that's from the Fool to the Universe card. There's generally 22 cards. There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. There's lots of different theories about where that alphabet came from and what it signifies and represents and everything else. But the deck that we're talking about today does not have a major arcana. And it also does not have a queen, right? And so that's kind of interesting. Didn't you say that the 3 court cards, when I was looking at them, none of them are obviously like clearly, definitively female, right?
No, they're mostly look male to me. Even
Right.
the Donna to me, it looks like a dude, or it could be like a young boy, a page. That's the word I was thinking of before.
Page. There you
A
go.
page.
Yeah. Okay. And so to me, what that means is that this system that we're talking about today, there is a distinct lack of the feminine, in my opinion. And so there's no major arcana, which relates to spirit, ether, and I would say personally, the feminine. I look at the mysteries just in general, and I think that there's a strong feminine sort of goddess quality to that. And you don't have it here. It's not present in the system. So it kind of lends itself actually to be used more like a gaming system than it would an actual divinatory system. Although you can do divination, like I was saying earlier, with basically anything. So you can actually do divination with a normal playing card set, right? And so some people refer to that system, if people want to learn more about it, as the cards of destiny. And so that's one sort of way of looking at it, but just wanted to acknowledge that it's missing, the major arcana. And so that's kind of a big thing depending on how you look at it. But it lines it up more so with being used to play these card games with.
That's interesting. Anwar, do you want to show some of the pictures you
cards?
found? Yeah, of like the older cards.
Awesome. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, I'll pull them up now.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and these were like, I think I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure these are like the case that I was talking about, where these were like done by hand. Like you would get different versions, I guess, obviously.
Yeah, I guess like no two card would be the same.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Authentic. They'd all be very.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
was
wow.
death. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that this death card has a bow and arrow, which is really interesting because death generally corresponds with Scorpio, which has its stinger, right? And there is a symbolic relationship between the stinger of Scorpio and the tip of the arrow of Sagittarius. And so Sagittarius is right after Scorpio. And sometimes Sagittarius is actually pulling back the arrow, and it's pointing right at the stinger. And so there's just this really, really interesting thread between archery, Sagittarius, Scorpio, whatever. But this is like one of the only death cards that I've seen that actually makes use of the bow. Usually he's holding a scythe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Makes me like think of like maybe something to do with like the archer too, and the archer is associated with a bow.
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah, exactly.
These are just
nice.
the old ones.
That's interesting. And then we have more female presence there with some of those cards.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Dude's like,
what
is that?
Yeah, it's the fool.
He's coming out of his head or something. He's got horns.
Yeah, he's got horns.
Here.
That looks like a lady.
Unfortunately, it just looks
I believe
bad.
so, yeah.
So small.
Yeah, I think those are feathers.
Yeah.
Crown of feathers.
Yeah, which makes sense. The fool generally is associated with air symbolism. And so that's implied with the feathers, I would say.
I'm trying to think, is the fool it might be the Magus card on the Toth deck. Remember you said there was like, if it looked like feathers to you, possibly? Peacock feathers, maybe?
No,
I'm thinking the Hermit. I'm sorry, it was the Hermit card that had that with the tongue, and it looks like possible like hair or feathers.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I was confused. Sorry.
A lot of these older full cards, by the way, it's really interesting. Just go back, if you don't mind, for a second. They are wearing, like, they're sometimes seen in their underwear, and sometimes it's like falling off of them. And then even I've noticed this like saggy sock thing, right? It's like he has two socks, but they're like falling off of him too.
It's got like a diaper. He's like a toddler.
Yeah.
It's just got droopy socks, a droopy diaper. What's going on?
Exactly. Anyways, just something I thought I would point out. But that's something that you're going to see in multiple older tarot decks like that.
Hmm. These are pretty cool looking.
Nice.
That's it that I got for those.
Do you know around what year those were from and why? Like 14th century, probably?
Some
Same.
of the older ones, like the ones that I showed at the beginning, were definitely from the older ones in the 1400s.
Look like very
But
Elizabethan
some of
time.
these other ones were decks made by them, but like different versions.
Mm,
It's still the Visconti deck. So some of them are not as old as the others, but they're old.
yeah. That is interesting. Well, thank you for finding those images. I also learned in my research for this that some people do use the regular Italian playing cards for tarot or divination
Yeah.
themselves, which I thought was interesting. So I found a few like basic meanings. So, like Ace of Cups apparently has to do with the house, home, and stability, current events, physical buildings like your physical house, home or work, family, harmony, sincerity, and cheerfulness. The Three of Swords has to do with travel, leaving someone or something, divorce or end of a relationship or resolutions. Could
Hmm.
also have to do with deception, betrayal, slander, the evil eye, or spells used against you. Also, insults, falsehoods, and cheating. The Ace of Coins, so got the Sun, double-headed eagle guy, obviously to do with the Sun. The Apex of happiness, maximum attainability, bringer of love, luck, and success, and of course relates to the Pentacles in tarot. So yeah, I thought that was interesting. That's all I could find on what people would interpret the cards as.
Gotcha. Thanks for
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
I think I want to grab a deck. Honestly, one
sure.
of these. I don't have one. You know, and you're introducing it to me, but I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Thanks for that. And why? Yeah.
Yeah, with just some other ones too that I can throw up on the screen. The
Once
pictures.
again, the pentacle is missing from that ace.
Right? Okay, so I have a deck here. This is the Piacentine deck, and it has the circle is filled,
Oh, okay.
but it's a single eagle with a crown on it.
Right.
Yeah, interesting.
Gotcha. Yeah, so they're definitely associating it more so with fire. Eagle
Yeah,
generally, that's its correspondence, I would say, most of the time.
and like in the chat, we have Lisa who's saying it reminds her of Quetzalcoatl, and I was like, "Yep,
Mm-hmm.
very much Quetzalcoatl vibes."
Right.
Yeah, so those are different. That looks like the Sicilian deck, I think. Those ones, yeah. So the middle row there in this picture, that's the
Oops.
donna, the the page or the woman or the knave.
Mm,
So to me, I don't know, it doesn't look very feminine to me. It's very like ambiguous.
no. Right.
Yeah. Hmm.
Androgynous, maybe.
Yes, very androgynous. Exactly. Yeah, that's the ace in the Sicilian deck. Yeah.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
I'm noticing too that the king, I guess so how the court card system works. If you don't mind, just pulling up the one where it has a handful of them, the rows and
Sure,
columns of
yeah.
them.
Mhm.
Yeah. It's kind of a thing that I notice and I pay attention to, right, with the court card system. So generally, the way the court cards work in most decks, you're
This
going
one?
to have, yeah, that one works.
Okay, or is this one better? Sorry.
No, it's fine. Maybe that one, and just zoom in if you want to zoom into the right. The cards on the
On the
right.
kings, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So what you're doing with the court card system, so most of the time it's going to be page, knight, queen, king. And the simplest way I can explain it is that you're going from least experience to most experience, right?
Hmm.
Least amount of power to most amount of power. That's like the general sort of framework. Although the more I study and the more I just come to my own conclusions about things, I actually think that the queen is actually the most powerful one, and that I think that the whole system revolves around the queen. And so to me, it kind of reminds me of a beehive in a way, you know, where it's like the queen bee, she's at the top of the hierarchy, but she has these other bees that do a lot of work for her. They go out and they come back with this, that, and the other thing, right?
Hmm.
And so it's interesting. What I pay attention to is whether or not the king or queen, if there is a queen in the system, whether or not they're throned, because the concept of a throne is actually very, very feminine. It implies a domestic sort of thing. It's like staying still, but the power of the queen or the power of woman is that they're so magnetic that they can get shit done from the confines of the home. You know, they have other people doing shit for them. So it's you know, this is traditional symbolism, right? But like it's traditionally people look at the man as being the person that goes out and gets the bacon and brings it home, right? That he's going to go out and travel, he's going to conquest, or he's going to do all of these things, and the woman stays behind, and this is the most important role, so it's not diminishing it by any means. Takes care of the family, takes care of the home, you know, is domestic in nature, all that kind of stuff. So when you see a king actually sitting on the throne, my personal opinion is that he's actually emulating the queen. That the original royal figure that should be throned is actually the queen itself. And so when a king is sitting on a throne like that, he's actually paying respect, and he's actually kind of paying homage to the role of the queen. And you'll notice actually there's some tarot decks where they show a king sitting on a throne and he's very effeminate. Right, especially the older decks. The further back you go, you look at some of these kings on the throne, man, they almost look androgynous, honestly, but it's the emperor as an example. So here what you're seeing though is that the king is actually standing, which to me is a little bit more masculine. And I really like the way Crowley did it, that the knight is actually on horseback, right? Because it implies this traveling sort of thing and getting out there. And I also think that there's something to be said too, just about how our sex organs function, you know. And so it's like the sperm leaves the confines of man and goes out, you know, and inseminates this egg. So it's like men are kind of travelers that way. Woman, you know, she has eggs within her, and then she's the one who gets pregnant and actually stays with the baby for 9 months, etc. So the symbolism kind of matches up where man is more projective, more of a traveler, gets out there. Woman is more receptive and is more domestic. So this kind of, to me, the fact that the king is actually standing, it's a little bit more masculine, which kind of just goes back to my point earlier about how there's like a distinct lack of feminine sort of energy, I think, with this system. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say.
Yeah, well, I definitely can see
food
that.
for thought.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Well, and that kind of maybe goes with the idea of, like I was saying before, maybe not in this deck in particular, but some of the bats, bastoni, the sticks, they look almost like bundles.
Yes.
So again, going back to this like fascist system, very beast-like, very masculine, very orderly. It's reflective of that, I think, perhaps.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh man, I like that. So there's a horse facing the other way.
Yeah.
That's kind of curious.
Yeah, those ones are facing away from the foreground.
Right.
That is interesting. I never noticed that before.
Or even too, I like the little detail here with the base down below in the bottom row. The baton base, it's circular instead of it being kind of like a rectangle too.
Oh yeah. Look at that. That's interesting. Yeah, I wonder why there's those subtle differences.
Right. Or even too, just noticing as well with the horses up top, there's only one figure that's actually holding the object that they correspond with. And the three other figures, the object is just floating in the air. Or down below, you're seeing the cup floating.
Yes.
And then all of the other figures are actually holding the thing.
That pretty bad cup bearer. Aren't you supposed to be holding your cup?
Right.
That's
Very
funny.
cool. I love this.
Yeah. Well, I just wanted to make the connection. I think it's a pretty strong one. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me. I don't really have anything else to add if you want to add anything, NY or Mario, but yeah.
No, I just was surprised how much it resembles tarot.
Right.
I was just like, these are playing cards.
I never will see it the same way again, that's for sure. Yeah.
Right. No, I think I'm pretty good. I got around to, I think, all of my notes here. Awesome. But like I said, I thank you just for the introduction.
Yeah.
And it's something that I'm going to kind of pay attention to and probably look into a little bit more.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us. Do you want to tell people again quickly where they can find you and find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. So symbolicstudies.com is the place to go to. I have an online shop. So if you wanted to book a tarot reading, or if you wanted, I have digital downloads too, a study packet. I have a few other things as well. I've got prints and whatnot, but it's all available on my store. And then I would say too, if people are on Instagram, check me out there, symbolic.studies, and of course here on YouTube as well.
All right, awesome. And why I think everyone knows where to
Yes.
find you.
Yes.
But thank you for joining me for this, of course. And yeah, that's the end of another Spiritual Gangsters. So we'll see everybody in the next one.